My name is Kayla Young. I'm 25. I'm from Elyria, Ohio. I'm a physician assistant graduate student at Mount Union, and I currently live with PTSD, depression, and anxiety. First noticed I was dealing with mental health issues actually when I was about 10 years old. I had grown up with my biological father across the country and had a lot of issues with him growing up. And then I think what sparked it is he had come back to Cleveland to visit and brought back like a fiance or a wife that I had no clue about. And from there, it was kind of like a downward spiral. I actually started to self-harm by cutting in sixth grade. And by the time I was in middle school, I was suicidal, self-harming, burning myself, cutting myself. I it, it's crazy because at the time I had kept it all to myself, and then I ended up playing basketball with Miss Star and wrote her a note that I wanted to kill myself. I hated everything. And of course, she was a teacher, so she had to turn it in. And that is probably what saved me because that's what got me into counseling. When I was younger and I first got the diagnosis of depression and anxiety, it I actually was happy because I knew that it wasn't just in my head. I wasn't just crazy. My parents and my family, like, this is not something that they had ever dealt with before, so it was kind of like foreign. Like, when I would say how I felt or that I was suicidal or, to them it was kind of like, what's wrong with you? Like, you're not really going through anything. You're a kid, at that point. Or we just had to like pray and go to church and like everything would be better. So when I had a counselor, another adult speaking to my adult parents saying like, this is what's wrong and it's valid, it made me feel validated. So with that, I felt happy. But when someone first told me that I had PTSD, I think I was probably about 20, 21, maybe 22. So a few years after I had been raped. I was like, oh no, lady, you don't know me. I don't have PTSD. Like, I don't know what you talking about. That's how I was at first. Until I Googled it myself and realized a lot of the symptoms were lining up with PTSD. So I was having panic attacks like daily, every single day. I couldn't really drive or go anywhere because I would panic. I had nightmares every single night, multiple nightmares a night. And these were not like somebody's under the bed trying to get me. These were like somebody's murdering me and my whole entire family. Like, these were like demons, like trying to get me in my sleep. I would wake up out of my sleep scared to go back to sleep. These were the types of things that I was experiencing, and I thought, okay, maybe it's just depression, it's not PTSD. But then I had actually started listening to The Body Keeps the Score. I don't know if you've ever heard about it, but it's a book about PTSD and trauma, and how a lot of the times the trauma that we experience, mentally we may not grapple with it for a long time, but it's stored in our body. And so at that point, my body had stored the trauma I had endured. And that's why I was experiencing all of these, crazy things like the panic attacks, the nightmares, all of these other things. And so when I finally listened to that book, it kind of clicked in my head and said, wow, it once again all makes sense. I'm not crazy. There are other people experiencing these things. I may not have realized it at the time in my head that I had been violated or that a traumatic event took place, but my body knew that something was wrong and it was telling me like something is wrong. when I was young and had no support with coping and didn't even really know what was going on in my mind. I had self-harm in different ways, and throughout the years in high school, I kind of coped with volleyball and sports, but I was still really, really depressed. I had also been going to counseling, so I think that is kind of what kept me from self-harming. I didn't want to do medication at the time, but they had threatened that if I didn't stop self-harming, that they would put me like in a mental institution, like an inpatient counseling center, and I was afraid to do that. So I stopped that, but I continued with counseling and sports over the years. And unfortunately, I didn't get to keep playing sports in college. So once I got to college, I was far away from home, about 3.5 hours, and I turned to drinking. And at the time, I was in like an emotionally and mentally abusive relationship my freshman and part of my sophomore year. And when that ended, I was completely lost. Like, that abusive relationship had taken so much out of me that I had no sense of like how to cope. So like I said, I was drinking a lot, sleeping a lot, like disordered sleeping. So I would go to sleep really late, and then I would sleep in the next morning, but like all day and not go to class. And this is in college, so I don't know how I pulled it through, but I had gotten to a point where I was like, I'm either gonna kill myself because I can't live like this. Like I can't be this depressed. I can't be this lost, or I need to get help. So eventually I decided to get counseling and start working out. And that helped for a while, but life, has ups and downs, and I felt myself in like a pattern of unhealthy coping mechanisms and healthy coping mechanisms. And I had my sophomore year, I had actually gotten raped by a friend, someone that I had went to high school with actually, and that kind of ruined the whole healthy coping mechanisms, and I was back to drinking and disordered sleeping and using food as a coping mechanism. So with the newfound like PTSD on top of the depression and the anxiety, it was hard to find those healthy coping mechanisms. I'd say in the last few years or so, I have gotten back to wanting to grow and wanting to heal. And so recently, I have gotten back into counseling. I go every other week because even if even if I'm doing okay, I want to make sure I stay okay. So I go to counseling, I try to work out, I try to deal with my unhealthy eating patterns. It doesn't help, sometimes I still eat terrible when I'm sad or depressed, but I try to remind myself to just at least get some fruits and vegetables. So I think the biggest thing definitely lately has been counseling, medication, trying to just nourish my body in whatever way I can, and God got me. I don't even know how that's probably the biggest thing for me, is that I feel like he really, really saved me in the past 5 to 7 years, because I wouldn't have made it. Like I really would have probably ended my life if I wouldn't have turned to him. When I first started counseling, I was actually in middle school, and I was totally against it. Um, I was just an angsty, angry, you know, 10, 11, 12-year old, and was angry that Miss Starr had even told anybody. Like, I wanted to just keep it to myself. So for a while there, I would go and barely speak because I just didn't want to be there. I was just so angry. And then over time, I realized that it was helping me and it wasn't like a waste of time, and it was a place where someone was listening to me. And I had felt for a long time that I didn't have a voice. And especially as a child, it was one of those things where it's like you speak when you're spoken to. And I know it's best for you. It doesn't really matter what you say. So in those sessions, I realized like I was important, my voice mattered. And over the years, I really have learned to and enjoy it, I guess. And I realized, especially, I think within the past 5 or 6 years, that how vital it is to me just living day to day, because I've been through a lot of heavy things, and I have always felt like a burden to my friends or family members, and realized that they're not equipped to talk about some of these things that I've been through. And so having a place for me to go to, and have someone listen to me and kind of reaffirm that I'm not crazy, or that, this stuff is normal with people who have been through similar things to me, I've learned to love it. Counseling is now like my safe place, my self-care, like it's at the top of the list. I have to go. When I was younger, I didn't really feel like my family supported me at the time, my parents. And I wasn't allowed to tell my grandparents. I was the first person, I think, in my entire family who had been clinically diagnosed with, I'll say it that way, depression and anxiety and all of these other things. And so it was something that they wanted to keep within us three. And because they didn't really understand depression and anxiety when I was a kid, they made it feel like it wasn't real. So that was really hard for me growing up. But as I got older, I, took it into my own hands, like took my care into my own hands, and really found my voice and said, this is real. This is not just in my head. There's a biological basis to this. And started to educate my family members. And as I was 18 and older, then I finally was able to, say to my family, this is what I'm going through. And their support and their understanding has grown as I've gotten older. And I think because I've been so outspoken as an adult about my struggle and about what I've been through, I think that my family has learned a lot. And my dad has actually said, you've taught me a lot through this journey. And when you were younger, I would have just thought I needed to take you to church. But now I understand how important counseling is, how talking through it is, how important medication is. And I think through our struggles, like between me and my parents, they've been able to accept it more. Like with my younger sister, they were always there and to like support me and wanted me to get better. So it's not like they were just throwing me to the wayside, but they didn't know how to support me when I was younger. And so now I'd say me and my dad are the closest we've ever been, and that's my best friend. And my mom has learned to like talk about her feelings, and just through like me learning how to do those things. So their support and their understanding has grown tremendously throughout the years. And I know that if I never need anything, if I call, they're going to answer and they're going to do it. And then my best friends, man, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here without them. I had a rough time in high school. A lot of people did not like me. And so having the friends that I've had for so long that have stayed solid through all the stupid decisions I've made, I'm just thankful for that. Super young Kayla was a firecracker. She knew who she was. She knew she was smart. She knew she was destined for great things. Along the way, there were things that happened, unfortunately, and I'd say middle school, high school, Kayla really lost herself, and she didn't know who she was, and she was angry, and she didn't think she would make it to 16 years old, and then she didn't think she would make it to 19 years old. Honestly, she was a shell of a person at that point. Teenager, young college student Kayla was so lost until one day, somehow, she finally found herself. And I'd say today, Kayla is a work of art. She is trying to grow every day. She's not perfect. Sometimes she doesn't know her worth. But all in all, she loves herself. And she's happy to be in this body that has carried her through so many tragic events, from other people, from herself. The advice I would give to my younger self, or what I would say to my younger self, is that you need to learn how to love yourself at every stage. There will never be a time where you're perfect, but you were made in God's image and are perfect in His eyes, and that's what matters. So even if you're not the weight you want to be, even if you feel like you're at your last straw, even if you don't like what you look like or aren't happy about where you're at in life, you're exactly where God placed you to be. So learn how to love yourself in that moment. Always be trying to evolve and grow and learn how to be a better you, but understand the you that you are right now is perfectly okay.